Hey yo, what up, guys? This is QB for the Chopper Express, and I'm here with Edwin and Mark. And today, what we wanted to do going into Knoxville is bring y'all our interpretation with a slight little bit of debating on what the tier list is going to look like going into Knox, what you should expect, what the meta is going to look like. We all have different takes, so we're just going to get together and kind of go through it. We'll probably just run through the list as it is. So we'll start from Ace, go to Zoro, and try and just give y'all interpretation of what you should expect going into Knoxville if you're going. At the end, we'll maybe go ahead and give our choice of what we would also pick going into Knoxville as the winner. Um, I already know who they're gonna pick, but they may have different opinions. They may change on me. You never know. So, is there anywhere y'all want to start out at? I don't know if you do. Y'all want to start with anything specific?
Nah, we can just go top to bottom.
So I guess we'll start with Ace. What do y'all think about Ace right now?
I think ever since the hits from for, like the Whitebeard cards, I just think this deck got kind of like rogue tier. I mean, it feels kind of harsh to say, but it's like the only thing it really has going for it is Flame Emperor, and like I think against like the meta cards, it's not that good.
Do you feel? I guess. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh no, I'm thinking.
I know you played it at Gen Con. Do you think like since the format kind of shifts from? I know when you played it there, you probably have based it off playing more into Zoro and Whitebeard. But do you think those decks are still going to be like the top, I guess, meta contenders going into Knoxville? That like this deck has a chance, or do you think the fact that maybe some of the other decks like Queen or the new decks Queen, Becca just have good matchups into it, and so it just kind of like falls out of favor?
Uh, I think it's. I think Zoro and Viper are probably still popular enough to where it's playable. I think it also has a good matchup into the green purple Dofi deck, but I think it does struggle against Queen specifically. But I don't think that deck's popular enough, so it's probably still like playable. Like maybe tier two
Maybe
might be a hot take.
I don't
This
think
is probably fun.
it's probably
Somewhere between that and Rogue, I think.
The only my only issue with the deck is that I think Yellow is going to be extremely popular, and I think Ace has no chance
Oh
against
yeah,
Yellow.
that's true.
it's a struggle of a matchup. I'm not gonna lie.
I think personally, I'd put it in Rogue. I think that it's not a deck that you probably want to take going into the event, and I think your matchups are gonna have to line up like you kind of said. I think the Queen matchup, and then anything that basically plays like Katakuri and other yellow cards,
Yeah, yellow.
it's just like out advantages are pretty fast, and a lot of the removal that it has going to the format is more for I guess like 5K and lower stats. But I feel like in the new meta, we're gonna be playing a lot more like 7K to 8K stats in our later end of the turn. So finding its value for removal doesn't seem like it's going to be there all the way. Personally, I
Yeah,
think it's a rogue deck, but I don't know if
you can
y'all
put
agree.
it in Rogue. That's fine. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Also,
Rogue.
I'm gonna go ahead and just say real quick, these aren't gonna be in any specific order, y'all. Like this is not like any rogue deck is any better than the other, or any tier one deck is better than the other. We have our personal opinions. We'll be here all day if we want to try and fight for what's the best deck in the format or best deck going out of Knoxville. So we're not going to do all that. Next leader we have is Arlong. You know what, Mark? I'm gonna go ahead and let you take the lead, bro. This is your boy.
Um,
I want to see what you have. Actually, I'm not gonna lie to everybody.
okay,
I don't know what he's gonna say, so let me go ahead and let him go.
no joke. Tier two. And it hurts me to put it that low. But
Put it that low.
put it that low. Like one of the biggest issues. Not one of the biggest issues, right? But you get the Sanji blocker. That card broken. That fixes like half the problems the deck has off the bat.
All
That's
right.
it. Actually, that's the only. That's
That's
actually
it.
that's the only card. Just the Sanji blocker.
You don't
But
want
it's
to.
so insane.
Oh,
It's so broken.
you know what, guys?
Dude, put it in Rogue, dude.
I,
Just put it in Rogue.
I didn't want to put it in Rogue, bro. I wanted to put it. If you want to go ahead and try it, go ahead. But
Yeah, honestly, yeah, it could go one of the bottom too. I think its best chance was an OP3, which is crazy to say because it got better cards. But like,
Hear me out here. Hear me out here.
I don't know.
It beats every yellow deck. It's too fast for the yellow decks. Okay. All right.
Wait,
Don't
that
be
was
so
before
far.
they had Veggie and Sanji though.
This deck also plays both those cards.
Fine, but you say it was too fast for the yellow deck, but the yellow deck now got cards that can slow people down.
It doesn't slow it down enough. All right. All right. Zoro, bad matchup. Hopefully, all the new decks take that deck out of the room. You just dodge the Zoro deck, and I think you're chilling. I think it's favored into Whitebeard, into every yellow deck. I don't know how it is into Rebecca. I'm not gonna. But I think in theory, like 7/7 is pretty good against Rebecca. I think it's too fast for that deck too.
I just think like the Rebecca deck is gonna be able to remove every minion, so it is the deck is literally sevens, and then it's like because you're low on life, Rebecca doesn't have to like try as hard to like win the end game anymore. But so you want to put it in tier two?
No, no
That
way.
I'm
Put it
asking.
next to Ace. Put it next to Ace. That's the best it can get.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That's the best it's gonna get. Mostly because I know Mark. I hear you, bro. It's gonna be some tough decisions made in this video for some of us, but this kind of just where our long sits. I think probably just try it into the new meta. Like he said, maybe the yellow matchup still is favorite like it was before, but it was a rogue deck back then and it's a rogue deck now. So I mean, I don't know how you could elevate in the meta when it was a rogue deck last format, even though it was good against some matchups. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, we can go to the next. We can go to the
The
next.
next one is Mono Croc, and this is a hot leader that people are talking about
Tier
coming
one.
into. You said tier one?
I think this is a tier one leader.
Interesting.
I had it in one. I had it in 1.5 just because I haven't tested it enough. I know the good
Oh,
matchup
this
is
is a
Rebecca.
1.5 tier.
Yeah, I put it 1.5.
Oh, yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
Like, I was also gonna say, I think it's 1.5. I think the top end is really nice. I think it's got a pretty decent curve. You got a searcher now for like the who's who if you want to play the Animal Kingdom Pirates. I think it's got a lot going for it.
I just don't know. I don't know what matchups outside of Rebecca that it's like. Okay, I'm looking for that matchup. Like I know the Rebecca matchup is like.
Probably green purple Dopey.
You think so? Probably just because like the removal does hurt that deck a lot. Personally, I think it's 1.5. I think it'll have a lot of showing, especially in Knoxville, just for being. If people it feels like right now, based on talking to other people, that like building for Rebecca is part of the meta going into that one. So in my opinion, it's probably 1.5 just because that matchup specifically, and then every other matchup feels really playable with the amount of removal that you have.
Just dodge yellow and you're good.
Yep, dodge yellow. Good luck with that.
You know, I'll say this too, just before we go to the next leader. The Crocodile matchup is obviously yellow favored, but there are worlds where if you actually see the perfect removal and like you saw a good curve against the yellow deck and they maybe didn't see great curve, like there's a world you can still win. Like it doesn't seem like a.
I'm saying it's yellow favored.
Oh yeah, well I just so people know, it's like it is definitely yellow favored, but it's not unwinnable. So I think because of that, like tier 1.5 is like perfect for it. I think that's your hardest matchup. I think a lot of people will play it as in yellow, but I think it's still really solid.
Yeah, I think it's a really good deck. I, I, I will say this. Personally, I think that it's one of those decks that every set we look at it and we're like, dang, this leader's effect is so broken, and blue just keeps getting such broken cards that it has to be good. But then it just like as we go through the meta, it just kind of falls out of favor. And I kind of think that's what the same thing's gonna happen. I think at Knoxville, it's built to be Rebecca. I think there will be a decent amount of Rebecca people there, and so it's going to take advantage of that. But then after we fall to that point where people just can't play Rebecca because it's getting targeted so much, then it'll come back to it'll fall back, and then we'll kind of have that cycle where Rebecca will kind of fall in and be like the best deck for like maybe a week or two, and then it'll fall out because people start targeting it again, and then we'll just have that kind of cycle. So that's kind of how I see the deck until I get beasted up by it when I play something else. So. Another fan favorite. People love blue. Dofi, Doflamingo, the mono blue one. Um, I don't really know what this deck does going into the new decks. To be honest, I have always seen it as like an aggressive red deck. So like I don't feel like the advantage that it gets from summoning free minions is still there because there's so much removal for those minions now. Even though like theoretically, if you remove a minion, that means you're not establishing. So that means they get to just attack you for 7 again because you didn't get to actually establish any board presence that turn. So I think it's probably a tier 2 leader just because like it doesn't have. Again, I don't think into like we said before. If you're kind of getting the gist right here, yellow is kind of the deck that we're kind of like, okay, like if your deck's not beating yellow, then you're probably not tier 1 because we're kind of theorizing that that's probably going to be the most popular deck going probably into Knoxville for the most part, outside of like Dofi maybe or green purple Dofi. But Dofi just feels like a tier 2 leader.
Yeah.
Feels like other decks have caught up.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think just Crocodile seems like a leader that's like better positioned for the new meta. So I think Dofi for the first time is probably not the best mono blue leader, but could come back later.
Any thoughts, Mark? Tier two, tier 1.5, tier one maybe.
I think 1.5.
Do you think blue leaders are just like? Do you think like just like solid blue leaders are just probably in 1.5 because they just have that
Yeah,
advantage? I mean,
I
that's fair.
think it's that card got so many good cards.
That's fair. I just don't think you can fit Red Rock in it. So like, what good card is it really getting? Like you could fit Red Rock, but like, does it really do anything different than it was? Like,
No, I think it does the same thing, but I think the game plan's still like pretty good into almost everything. So I think it's like I don't know. I think it's the same as Croc because like you never really use. Wait, hold on. Yeah, no, I put it the same. I think I put it the same as Croc.
okay, I mean, I think it's probably somewhere between tier two and tier 1.5. I haven't like looked at it enough in the new meta to be like maybe it's not. I think theoretically it probably is tier 1.5 just because it probably also has like because of its effect and the style it plays like it swings seven at Rebecca and it swings seven at other leaders. So like Rebecca just has to pitch too many cards for that if the game keeps going like that. So it's probably like 1.5.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think it's still good into red. Like red's still gonna be a color next set.
Yeah, that's gonna
This
be
deck's really red favored.
especially like starting on the format. All right, like I guess we have two 1.5s and a tier two on that one. I guess we'll just stick it in 1.5 for now, see how it does. And I think like, as we get towards like mid format, maybe we can look back at our tier list and just see like how close were we to being right. I know we're already like probably what 3 for 4 because someone made us put Arlong and Rogue, but it's okay. No
Yeah.
no disrespect to the Arlong people out there. We're not trying to disrespect y'all. We just some of us think that the deck doesn't do anything. uh, Yellow Big Mom.
Big Mom.
She was for a while, for like maybe a week. People really liked her, and then as same thing, they kind of figured out Katakuri glass format was probably just the better leader going into it. It's kind of sometimes kind of hard to set up Big Mom. I think she had like one or two tops in OP03 format, but
Like the thing about this leader is that her effect is actually so broken for a yellow deck. But the problem is that like you basically have to be like whatever you're gonna put on top of your life, you're not gonna see until you go down to 2 life, right? So like whenever you're on 3 life, you use her effect, you put your trigger on top of your life. Once you go down to 2 life, and then you get your trigger. So it's like, how many turns do you really have where you're able to use this before you can play your 10 drop too? It's like I feel like you don't actually get to use the effect as much as you want to. I think that's the biggest problem.
that's
But it is still a yellow deck. I would put it tier 2.
I think it's
That's what I'm
Oh
it's
yeah, I would put it among tier 1.5 even maybe. Like it could play 10 drop Big Mom, and that card is easy.
I have it in tier two. I just don't think the deck is not it is it. For me, it does not give me the same feel as like Katakuri because it's not as free, and like putting two Dawn because you're trying to 10 drop big mom, so sometimes your opponent can just put you in a position where like you can't really put two Dawn, and if you don't put two Dawn, then it's kind of like, well, why are you just playing this leader to me? So it does feel tier two ish. I think, like you said, the game plan takes too long to kind of like set up to where you can start gaining advantage off of it. I think the whole game you're trying to stay even until you get to that point, but then sometimes it's just the game doesn't play out like that. So to me, it's a tier two leader. I think it seems like we kind of all agree with that one that like it's in that area for now. Maybe
Yeah,
I think when we're looking at tier two leaders, we're not saying like they're bad or anything like that. These are type of leaders that, in my opinion, probably like you may get like one top out of them, maybe in like every other event. You may have like one person who sneaks in if enough people play it or somebody cooked up a really nice list. And tier two kind of feels like that section where if you really like play that deck a lot, like you'll know all your matchups and you'll benefit from that because people won't really know your matchup.
yeah, tier 2 sounds good.
sounds right.
Uh, Black Luffy. So this deck
Put it at
actually,
the bottom.
I think it got
Put it to
second,
the bottom,
bro.
bro.
It got second at an event, bro. I don't know how big it was, like 1,000 person event. It got second or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. There are better leaders. Let's just say it like that. I think I think like I said, it probably falls like kind of the same theory. Like a lot of these like rogue and maybe even these leaders, people aren't going to know your matchups. So you can always play them. I just don't believe that you're gonna. We don't believe that you might give yourself the best opportunity to win all the time. But every leader is playable. Every leader has its good and bad matchups. It's up to you to kind of define whether or not it's worth it.
That's
Um,
fair.
Mark, you cool with this being in
Yeah,
the?
I mean, there's no reason to play it over any other black leader. That's how I see it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Do we want to do these two together? Because they're both like they're the same color, and they kind of like benefit from the same cards that are coming out in OP04.
Yeah,
So I
they're
don't.
basically the same deck.
They're basically the same deck. It's just kind of like, do you want to play? Do you want to play for your top end, or do you want to play for or Croc? Where Croc is like trying to play the long, long game, and then
Yeah, slow and
Kaido's
steady.
Kaido's just like, all right, bro, I'm racing to my top end. So, but they're both like they both have the same amount of removal. Uh, they play the same amount of defense. They're just two different styles. And personally, I would say they're both like tier two ish. I think when they're piloted, especially the Croc deck, I think when it's piloted by a good player, I think that they'll see a lot of benefit because you're able to have all the control of the whole game. But the only problem is sometimes if a person can outpace your removal and kind of like not get into that game state, they can kind of like take all your cards. And then you're trying to like remove a card plus summon a card plus try and draw plus have stuff up for your Don. So I think when people start swinging like high attackers into it, it kind of forces your hand sometimes. But it's blue. Blue is strong.
Yeah,
Red Rock is strong. 3,000 swords or 3,000 worlds is strong. So like it has the tools.
yeah, I'm down to put these in tier two. I think that
I think tier two's a good spot for 'em.
I
Derek,
think if they had 5 life, I think we might be talking like higher up. But I think like these leaders being 4 life, especially in, like the current meta we're about to enter, I think it's really tough.
I think there's one Punisher of four lifers, but like the four lifers, they're stepping up, dude. I think like the Croc, Kaido, we're gonna get into some that are coming out in OP04. I think all of those are pretty strong going into the meta because the pull for their cards is so broken now. So
Yeah,
both of
I
these,
think getting access to two card pools is too good.
yeah, they're basically just putting like 50 good cards in your deck. But shout out to Derek. He's probably gonna push us into 1.5 at some point. We're gonna feel stupid. So, Black Ale Big Mom.
Ooh,
It's I think it's next to the starter mom. It's the same thing.
That's all.
Like it's
Put them together.
it's just the exact same.
Yeah, they're basically the same leader. I don't think we need to go over her too much. She must. You could probably push her down into Rogue if you really wanted to, but I don't know. We won't. I don't think we need to discuss her too much, to be honest.
No, I think it's the
nah.
exact same as starter mom,
Uh,
word for word.
Emporio, and this she might be the worst blue leader. Crazy enough, we may get to another one that's worse later on, but I think what her game plan does, Queen does, and so even though you Queen you get one less life, you'd rather just play Queen because Queen is like almost having infinite life if you're able to solve the game. So I feel like she's pushes herself into the rogue category, or even the you should try play. You can play it if you want to, but it has some qualities that are really good going into the meta. In the blue mirrors, it probably has an advantage. It could have an advantage just because it puts like two minions on the board at the same time that are both hard for blue to both target in the same turn. So there's a chance. I think she can sneak up. I would put her in the rogue category just for that reason that like Ivankov into the blue Luffy or Ivankov into five cost Croc is probably pretty strong into the blue mirrors. And if blue's going to be pretty heavily populated, then this card could have some advantages. Or
Yeah,
this deck, I guess.
I just think they're better blue decks at this moment in time.
Yeah.
I think that like if we're trying to get low on we're trying to get low on cards in hand. You probably just want to play Queen instead.
Yeah. I think it can go in the rogue
Put
category.
that shit.
Put the where? You want to put it here or rogue?
I think they're going rogue. Yeah,
I think it's a rogue.
I think it's rogue.
All right.
Because honestly, its curve is still pretty good. Like if you actually see everything on curve, it's not bad.
I mean, the other blue decks can play that though. Like the Croc deck and Kaido can both play Impel Down engines if they really want to.
True. That's true.
It's one of those things where it's like, why are you not just playing a different blue leader with the same cards?
Yeah.
This one. All right, guys. It's sad to say. I know people are new to Chopper Express in OP02. I was a Garp main. I think honestly, I still believe the Whitebeard matchup is so favored and Garp's favor is so crazy, but that was a time that we are no longer in. I do think the deck has the removal to deal with some of the decks, but it can't deal with other control decks just out advantaging it, which I think all the blue decks do. The red decks, Zoro's too fast. I think it has like one amazing matchup and maybe like a couple other solid matchups, but for those that are in the Church of Garp, I'm sorry, but we're down here right now. There may be like a I tried out the like FTK list and it just didn't work. It just like you just if you can't FTK them or like not FTK but like if you can't set up the combo to like unblockable Luffy for big numbers, then like the game's just kind of hard. And if they know you're doing that, they kind of just stay as high as possible because they know if they go to two, they die. So it's just if somebody does it, hey bro, if you're out there and you play the Garp deck and you have a list for OP04 and it's like you're just working, please ship me the goo, bro, because I really do love playing the deck. So if you have it, but for now, just try it. If you wanted to, you could try it. Uh, our
What's the one
first
leader?
our first OP04 leader, and I'll let Mark
Our
go ahead.
first tier 1 leader.
I'll go ahead and let Mark take it over because he's been testing this leader pretty heavily up until this point. Go ahead and take it over. What do you think, Mark?
Oh, I think it's tier 1. Easy peasy. I just think being able to play like both film colors, insane. I don't know. It out advantages any other deck. That's it, actually. That's the only thing I do in every game is just play to put me on 80 cards and them on none, and eventually you win the game that way.
It's true. Also, I think it's important to mention the new 10-drop Dofi. It's coming out in OP4.
Yeah,
That card being
broken.
played back to back is oppressive, extremely oppressive.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we were seeing in our testing so far. Is that it's it's one of those decks that like it's always in the game because it has 10 drop Dofi. And Dofi, no matter if there's a 2 to 5 life disparity or like you're at 0 and they're at 3, it has the potential if they do not respect the card or if they can't afford to play around it to steal the game back. So I think that's one of the avenues. I think we just had a small discussion before the video. Me and Mark would say that Sugar is probably like a top 2 card in the set. I think that's another card that's like makes the deck really insane because it's almost a floodgate against some decks. It's basically a floodgate against like Rebecca if they don't have it. If they don't, yeah, basically you can just get flooded out of the game. You can't play anymore sometimes. I think if we want to make our quick calls real quick, I think it's gonna win Knoxville. I think that like it has some of the benefits. I'm the problem is that it could be one of the on the list of the targets. So in my opinion, I think Rebecca and Dofi are the two. Hey, we're just gonna play decks that whoop these decks, and then we'll play against every other deck. But I think they're both kind of solid, and I think they can kind of benefit for the fact that this one can benefit from the fact that Dofi can still just win the game even in the bad matchups by itself. Next leader, we're not gonna talk about this one. We're just gonna throw it over there. We don't even need to mention his name. It's okay.
But I got something I gotta say. It's in the right spot, but it's like if that deck had a way of consistently getting cards to hand, it might be crazy. But it just does not have that.
It's bad. It's bad. Um, Isho, I would say like this deck's. I would say the leader's actually
Like
pretty.
solid.
It's like solid. I don't know its good matchups. I don't know its bad matchups, but it's like a solid deck. It has removal. It can gain advantage. It kind of can. It plays Basil Hawkins, so you can like attack other minions and take cards away. It does everything it needs to do. It's just like finding room in the list for counterpower can be kind of hard, and that's really it. To me, I think it's better than not just having someone just try it, but like it could be a rogue deck. I think if we get into a meta where the leader's best matchup is, I don't know what I think the best matchup is. Probably Dofi. I think it has a solid Dofi matchup probably, but I think it kind of struggles against Katakuri. And then it probably has a decent Rebecca matchup just because you have a crap ton of blockers. Even though I guess your blockers get eaten up by the Luffy or other removal. So probably just like a rogue deck that can like function. It's really good against like red.
Yeah, I think if we saw this deck top, it would probably be like once,
Yeah.
maybe in the entire set. So Rogue's probably decent enough.
Yeah, I feel like
It's so close to tier 2 though.
Yeah.
So close.
I feel like the color combination is really strong. I think it has good cards. It's just like every other color combination is just better. But like it has the tools it needs. Um Kaido.
I know.
Kaido kind of phased out. I just don't. I I think theoretically you would think that like this is like one of those formats that like it could kind of thrive in because it is slower. There's not as much like there shouldn't be that many Zoro running around that can like beat up on you because a lot of the Zoros should be getting beat by like Dofi and Rebecca. So like you could play it and it has the tools. It's just like the other Dofi's a hard matchup if I remember. I think the Dofi, this is probably Dofi, the blue Dofi is probably a hard matchup. So it's probably tier two to me. I think that's probably where I would put it.
I think. Yeah, I think tier two's fine. It gets a lot better like after
Yeah,
the
like
three
mid.
captain started like in set 5.
Yeah, like midway when we get like the uses that makes everything your leader plus 1k.
Yeah, yeah.
I got this one.
Okay.
Um, Tier 1, instantly. No thoughts about it. This deck's broken. It's at least top 2 decks in the entire set. I don't know. It's crazy. Every card in this deck is just good. That's. I mean, I don't even know if we need to say more than that. This deck is crazy.
I'll elaborate. You can play Sanji, you can play Capone,
And 10 drop Big Mom.
and 10 drop Big Mom.
And
And 8
Conqueror.
drop Katakuri. And 7 drop Big Mom.
Okay,
It plays 50 really
And
good
it's got
cards.
a 5 drop. It's got a 6 drop. It's got full curve now. The deck's crazy. 8 incredible defensive cards, which is what the deck needed. I mean, it's just too good.
I would agree. I think it's also tier one. I think going into the set, I think one of the biggest benefits is that it whoops up on the other. It whoops up on what I would consider the top three, the third best deck, I guess. Cause I feel like it's somewhat of a triangle to me at the top. We'll get there. We'll get to her eventually. I think Rebecca is also probably tier one going into the event. I think the biggest problem of Rebecca at this point in time is that Katakuri is another tier one deck that stares her in the face and says, "Hey, this is a good matchup for me," and that the other 1.5s below her also say it's a good matchup. But the thing that Katakuri I think does is that like I guess it's kind of what I thought Zoro would do prior to like seeing how Japan played this set. Really, I thought Zoro would whoop on the fact that like they're 4 life leaders and they can't really do anything. But I figured out like they're just so broken. But I think Katakuri is actually the one that says, okay, like you're a 4 life leader, you can't take 7 the whole game. Like you just can't afford it. But I think the Cad Dofi matchup, which is our 2 tier 1s right now, from what I've seen with y'all testing, it seems almost 50-50, and it almost comes down to how good is the Katakuri life at the end of the game. But and how many 10 drop Dofis you can draw. So, but I think this leader's like super strong. I think the value you get, and then with like they said with the new Capone, Sanji, and those 2 cards are in my opinion top 5 coming out of the set just because of the impact they've had on this leader going into the new set. So I agree. I think it's tier 1. Kid. Oh, go ahead, brother.
Oh no, I was just agreeing it's tier 1. There's not much to say about it.
Yeah. Kid.
There's a lot of favorite matchups, you know.
I don't. I don't know how I feel about Kid in the new set or anything. I don't know how I feel about Green in the new set. I guess I should say like Green feels
Yeah.
weird.
Like,
Be-
I think the issue with green is it's a bit too slow, and it doesn't feel like its like power cards are that powerful compared to what's out right now.
yeah, I think
Just, didn't get anything new.
yeah.
I mean, technically they have the 10 drop Dofi, but I mean, like you could play it in that deck, but that deck, like lots of the green decks already have enough cards that are not they're not counter power. So I
Mhm.
don't know if you can actually just like flex it into every green deck. I mean, you probably can, but
I think I think the green's kind of just playing handicapped. I think every other color has enough removal to like keep it keep the game at bay. I think green the idea that green is a resting deck and we are out of a format where like there are weenies that your leader can just trade into for small. I think it's kind of where it struggles. Because now I think one of green's biggest weaknesses was like when your opponent had continuous removal for it, then like your leader doesn't apply enough pressure to like stave off that kind of thing happening. So usually you have to turn of the game into like at least for kids' perspective into let's go double swing and try and get value that way, and then that mechanic just doesn't work. So I think green is probably somewhere between rogue and tier two. I think at the beginning of the format it'll be rogue, just because
I think it's Rogue.
I just don't think there's too much removal at the blue level, at Dofi and at Katakuri. Well, Katakuri doesn't really have like a lot of removal. Katakuri, I don't think Katakuri is enough. The 8 drop is enough, and then having Bolt in life is enough to like keep it at bay. I think if I remember correctly, it had a really good matchup in OP03 into green. Katakuri did. So it's not. I don't think anything's gonna change. It's not like it got anything that makes it
Yeah.
super different.
Yeah,
I
Green
mean,
has gotten new cards for like 2 sets, pretty much.
Yeah, we don't need to talk
yeah,
about
like
this one.
for the green decks too, they have like Krieg and the 8 drop Odin. Both of those just get outed by the 8 drop category. So it's like your top end just gets outed too easy. I feel like you don't really get the full value on them.
And Red Rock. He gets
And
outed by
Red
Mihawk now.
Yeah. The
Tough life for green.
next one was King. We don't need to talk about that one. Just to be real. Sorry to the King lovers
Yeah.
out there.
I don't think I've seen him once at locals ever.
I saw him once in set one, but that was it. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. Bandai been doing purple kind of dirty, but they kind of made up for it. They had to make up for it. So I mean, we'll have a set five tier list at some point, but they made up for it in set five, so we'll take that. I know we just said green's probably just mostly rogue. This is probably the one green deck I think can actually survive, just because
1.1.
it's the aggro one. It's the one that can like close games. I think you still have your hard yellow matchups. You're still going to struggle with like removal, but like I think some of the things that this deck can do is that like the removal is usually have to be held for like it has to be almost be held for Krieg. It's because it's almost the best card in the deck. But like there's not a lot of times that you're trying to use 3,000 worlds on like little weenie cards that get this leader value. So to me, it's probably tier two. I think kind of it came on in the later end of the set, and I think the fact that like this leader can kind of trade into these two probably fairly decently. It gets playable. It's probably the best of the green leaders right now. Also get a 6/8.
Yeah.
Yeah, get this 6/8.
And what's that? What's the other card? Steal your bag, or what's that bag?
Out of the bag.
Out of the
Breaks
bag.
into your crows.
Yeah. So there's a couple
A
little
little more playable.
cute things you could probably do with the leader, but who knows? We saw it at the end. It's probably tier two. It's probably back. I would say back end of tier two. Like
Yeah, I put in tier 2, I think.
my boy, the boy again, young Lucci.
Lucci.
Again, honestly, still the best black leader. It's not close. Um,
Oh,
I haven't. Whoa, what do you mean? Whoa! I'm not counting Rebecca as full black. I'm saying that now.
okay. Okay.
That's probably should have said that from the beginning. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna say it. I still believe it in my heart of hearts that this deck is probably 1.5. I
Oh.
Yes, I know. Hot take for me personally. The yellow matchup was free last format. I think once
Oh, here it comes.
no. I don't really believe. I think the yellow matchup was already good, and I don't think it got anything new that makes me feel like it's not, because the way you played the matchup didn't really depend on like your opponent sneaking or your opponent ripping life and like things. You just had outs for whatever came out of the life. So I think it still has. I think Lucci and Black in general still has that ability. I think the caveat to it is that like maybe, and this is the thing, I haven't like tested it into OP05 or into OP04 as much as I should have probably. I don't know where it stands on the purple or the green purple Dofi matchup. And I think the only thing that's pushing it's probably like it's either 1.5 or top end of tier 2, just because the main problem may be that like blue being in the meta and the value that blue can get going into the matchup, because the matchup used to be that you could just play Isho and then they never had it out for Isho, and then that would kind of win you the matchup. But now they have Red Rock, so like I don't know. I would theory that like the matchup isn't as good, and you have to be more aggressive than you were. So you probably have to play like straight CP9 into this meta. So y'all are probably because y'all are gonna outvote me. Probably it's probably gonna be somewhere in tier 2.
Yeah, I was thinking it was tier 2. I
Yeah,
just
I-
think,
I think
it's
tier
one of those things where if you're playing a black deck, why are you not just playing Rebecca?
True.
Yeah.
I'm putting him at the top if it would let me.
It's not gonna let you.
There we go. There we
Yeah,
go.
so
there
you're
it
putting
is.
this in order, so.
I didn't say we were putting it in order. To be honest, I'll do a quick order, dude. These are right here. This is probably back here. These is probably right here. That's really everything else. It doesn't matter. But this is
Throw
probably
ahead of starter deck, Big Mom.
yeah, probably. This is probably like these up here. honestly, just this section is probably where I ordered. These two sections, you're going to be up for debate all night if you try and talk to people on these what 5 or 6 decks we might have up here. Magellan, I'm going to put it right next to Kaido. I think they're kind of the same deck. Like you,
Yeah, actually, I think Magellan has a good yellow matchup if they see their curve, which is like it's pretty easy to say, but like them actually playing the Magellan can seriously throw off a yellow player, and throwing the yellow player's curve off is like probably the worst thing you can do to them.
probably the same thing for it's like Magellan's like one of those where it's a good mid range deck, and I think it can win the mid range, and it has a lot of good tools like that. Plus, it has blockers, and then when you make it to if you make it to the late game, then I think the Rush Kaido kind of like can close games by itself and when itself the board back. But
Yeah,
I think sometimes it hinges too much on seeing either multiple Magellans or I think that 5 cost turn where you have to see Magellan. If you don't play Magellan, I think the game just kind of like you don't get that advantage that you're really looking for.
Ooh.
Uh, Miss Nami.
Okay, I got
Honestly,
a hot take here. I'm thinking tier 1.5, dude. I think this deck's kind of broken.
it was a little higher than I was putting. I was putting it tier two.
I just I think okay, I don't think it has a great yellow matchup or like a great green purple Dofi matchup, but if you're just like trying to bounce cards with Zeph and mill cards off of your events and stuff, like I think that this is a format where you might actually have enough time to be able to do that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of like super fast decks.
Yeah, I think it has a chance to really shine, but I think this is also like people complain about yellow having to be lucky. I think this is a deck that also has to be equally or more lucky because I think like the better your life is in this deck, there's a bunch of draw two triggers. If you see a lot of those, like your chance of winning go up like astronomically.
Yeah, I think I
Could be tough.
I think I'm kind of Edwin kind of convinced me on this, but I was about to put this in tier two. But I think I think it's in 1.5 just for the fact that like I don't know a lot of leaders that can apply enough pressure to make it not get good value on its events. And I think like kind of like yellow, it is one draw to event and its life away from like the game kind of getting spiraling. And then once you get Zeph, and then once you get Zeph on the board, even if he doesn't get like a full bounce off, as long as he bounces Kaya back, then that's enough value for you. But I think it's one of those decks that needs to be played by a really good pilot.
Oh yeah,
I
for
don't
sure.
I don't think you could just play this deck into a format and like not. I think you have to know like every matchup, how aggressive they can actually be in that matchup, and how many turns does he really have before you're just going to be eating life because the attacks are too big. So I think it's probably like back end 1.5, somewhere between 1.5 and 2, but there's no 1.75. So I would put the vote in for 1.5. But
I would
like
also do that.
I think the other problem with this deck is ain't nobody trying to test against you, bro. So
Oh yeah.
you are on your own, bro. Like nobody's trying to play this matchup. So that's the
You
unfortunate
might
part.
you might as well just rename 1.5 blue tier.
Pretty much.
But that's basically what it's
Oh,
about to be. No, because I have some hot takes that I might put in 1.5, but they're probably. I think 1.5 is going to be pretty large because I think 1.5 is like kind of the counter to like maybe some of the decks that are already in one, and like so it's easy for them to like shift up and down to where like. But I don't think these decks can ever like run the meta, and that's maybe just the way that the color is in general, that it is a responsive color and it's dictated by like what's in the meta. But like I don't think Dofi like last format Dofi was one, but I don't think Dofi can like do what it does and still be one in this format. That's how it feels. But I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I want to put
That's fair.
Odin in Rogue, but I don't think it's Rogue. I think it's probably just down here.
See, I think it's also down there, but I've heard from a couple people at locals, and I've seen people online like swear that this deck is better than people think it is. But I'm not convinced yet.
I think it's pretty solid.
I feel like
I think it's a good rogue deck.
a good road deck. You think it's just part of the green pool of like things
Yeah,
you
you
can.
just toss all the green
Actually, yeah,
leaders.
it probably is. Yeah, all the greens just go to rogue.
All right, bro.
Ah,
I'm gonna say it. This deck's bad.
yeah, I agree.
What?
This deck is bad.
Like I'm hoping someone will prove me wrong, but I also agree. I think this deck is not.
I just
Oh, that's a That's like a rogue deck minimum.
No, dude. I don't know
I just
what good.
disagree.
I have no idea what good matchups this deck has. Zero.
I agree.
Like I don't know if like when I hear rogue, I think okay maybe you like know like okay cool. If red gets really big, we know we can play these decks. I have zero idea what this leader is looking to play against. I
That's true. That's true.
I
I,
actually
what,
don't
what
know.
was it?
I played it for a bit. It just takes games super slow.
yes, it does, but like it does what this one, what the Blurple one wants to do, but like the Blurple
You can
one
play
gets
yellow
to
cards.
gets to play blue cards.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what it, like I don't know when I tested it I was just like okay dude like you know you're doing your thing and then it's just like okay like what am I doing like how am I out how the only out advantage is like my life is just never ending sometimes but also I
It's
just
like,
I don't
yeah,
know
you could just play 10 drop Big Mom, and instead of only gaining a life, you could also rip an opponent's life. So it's like, what's the reason to play this? Just because we like Croc? I mean, that's fair, but
but
I
hey
think it's pretty solid. That's like a
I think it's one of those that like we could probably get proven wrong because this is an OP04 leader. I think it's one of those that we can get proven wrong that like hey like somebody found a list or somebody found the matchup that like this card is good against. I think some of the lists that I saw from Japan where like you were playing like Black Maria and the value that you get off your blockers to like defend your life was really good. I think a lot of the OPO4 leaders kind of like I would say like dog walk like the red leaders that we used to play and like how they used to play because they're able to just like keep the game going for a long time and if you keep the game going so that's kind of where I see them at but I don't know. I'll let somebody prove me wrong. If you have a, like I said, if you have a list in the comments and you're like, hey, y'all are wrong, please go ahead and just put it in the comments so we can see, so I can figure out that I'm dumb.
Queen.
Tier 1.5.
Yeah, it's got blue. It's got blue.
Actually, tier 1. I think.
I
I
think it's
think.
tier two.
You think it's tier 2?
Oh, I think it's
I
1.5.
think it's like a high tier two.
Oh my
I
god!
think it's
I actually think this deck is broken. I think when I played it and I've watched other people play it, it makes sense because it just plays the game. It's like it just plays the game for forever, and like you never die, and you just run your opponent out of cards. It actually just starves everybody. I
you
think
bring yourself out of cards.
yeah, but you always have cards because you never run out of life. So basically, like every time you play Yamato or Katakuri, and you have like four, it'll affect his live or whatever. You basically get the quote unquote draw two, and then you can just like
Dude,
go to one and do it over again. All right, cool. I'm not at tier 1, fine. I'm at tier 1.5, but I think that's where it's supposed to be.
dude, I think it's a bit too slow to be tier one. That's my only problem with it.
I think it just has a monster Dofi matchup, but I think every blue might have a monster Dofi matchup if we're saying that. But I think it's probably tier 1.5. I think tier 2 is a little too low. I think the things that it can accomplish, and I also think it doesn't have like an awful. If your opponent is like super like linear, like they can only play like 1 minion a turn, I think it kind of gets is able to gain advantage off of that. Which is like there's only a couple decks. I think there's like probably like 2 or 3 decks that like can play more than 1 minion a turn. So I think it kind of benefits from that.
Yeah. I'll say I think I
Ooh,
think there's gonna be some players on it that are just terrible, and there's gonna be some players on it that are like gods. Like they'll make it look like it's the best deck in the format. But I think it's probably extremely player reliant. And I think just like generically, I think you can't put in tier two or tier one. I think tier two is where all like the bad players would be, and then tier one is where all like the good players would be. Just like to keep it healthy, dude. I think 1.5 is good for it.
what do you have it in tier 2, Mark?
I just think it's like a slow deck, but it's a slow deck that can't like it just runs out of cards.
But it does it on purpose.
Yeah, that doesn't make it better though.
Okay, Mark actually has a point. It actually doesn't make it better. Like it's cool that it can do it, but like, does it need to do that?
I mean, it does need to do it, but I think the problem is that it needs to.
Well, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is like when I say it doesn't need to do it is like there are other decks that can have a similar game plan that just don't need to do that. Like you can just defend out early, or you can play the 10 drop Big Mom like every other yellow deck should. But
But Yamato's broken.
Yamato's this is not Yamato's format, but I do think that card's broken.
So we're gonna. I think we've talked. I don't know where you're at, Edwin. I feel like you got kind of talked into tier two, like high tier two.
No, I'm on 1.5. I'm all aboard the tier 1.5 for Queen. I think that I think there are people that will destroy you with this deck, and I think there are some players that are just not going to be that good with it. But I'm putting it tier 1.5.
I don't know where I want to put it. I guess I'm the deciding factor. I don't know. It feels.
Two,
I feel like it's tier two, and I feel
wait, you
like
started off in tier 1.
yeah, I did.
Table talks.
Yeah, I got table talk to this one. I don't. I don't know. I think Mark's kind of right. I think some of the faults that he has is that a lot of the time you want to be at like three or less cards, but the deck because it plays so much non-counter, it's like one or two of those cards is already just dead, and so I think if you get put in that kind of situation, like your leader kind of has to try and close the game. And because you don't have enough counter in your hand, your opponent's just able to trade with your big dude every turn, which kind of sucks. Like in theory, you're probably like, okay, cool. Like I don't really care. They're skipping their turn, but it's like y'all are just doing that for forever. And then sometimes some leaders like Dofi can put two minions, and then if it does the Dofi on you, then you can like kind of reverse the game in that sense. And it kind of says, hey, you better have all the outs. So I don't. I kind of see it as high in tier two. I think it has. I think outside of the Dofi matchup, I don't know what the other good matchups are. I think you could argue like Croc and Dofi are solid matchups for it, but I think what Dofi can do to it and other decks that kind of get wide on it can kind of like make it not the best, not a tier 1.5 deck. I think it's like, I think it's kind of what tier 2 is. Like you have one matchup that you're like, okay, I know if I see this matchup, which is one of the most popular decks, I know I can win really easily. But every other matchup, I don't think I think you're going to be trying your ass off to like actually swing the game like you can. Like I said, like y'all said, when your opponent kind of sees you low on cards, they're it's kind of like how yellow was before. Like if you see your opponent you're low on cards, it doesn't matter if you get big mommed or like big dropped. It's like okay, cool, I'm just gonna put you to zero, and then once I put you to zero, it's like okay, they have to have Yamato to go back to two. So
Yeah, I mean, or like when you're on no cards, they can just take every turn to like trade with top end. Eventually, you run out of top end.
yeah, so I think that's some of the faults that it has, and I think having that it's kind of like how you're talking about starter big mom, like you have to like put yourself at a deficit in order to play the game. So I think it's probably tier two. I could easily see this leader going to 1.5 or tier one though. Hey, look
Yeah,
at
probably.
look at that, our first red leader. Um,
Ace.
oh, I lied. Sorry, Ace. I disrespected you. Luffy. To be honest, I think this leader kind of goes wherever, not like physically goes wherever Whitebeard goes, but like this leader is like to me synonymously connected to Whitebeard because that's when this leader is good. This leader is not. I don't think it's a good leader when Whitebeard is not the best deck. So to me, I'd put it in Rogue. Like I don't even think it's tier two.
Oh, I'm putting it at tier two.
Yeah, I think I'll put it tier 2 as well.
I so I guess I'll explain. So this is where my thought about it is. I don't think so. Red did not get any boosts this set outside of like it really didn't get any like boosts that kind of benefit the Luffy deck. I mean, you could play like Pell, you can play Chaka, but those cards are kind of probably like too slow going into the meta. I think the only deck that abuses them is Vivi, and I think that the plus 1k onto your leader, like it doesn't really matter as much unless Whitebeard or there's small minions in the meta because that's kind of where the red decks kind of thrive in a sense. So like the red decks kind of like the cards you want to put plus one Dawn on are like Robin. You could say Brook, and then you can put it on your leader to like swing seven sometimes. But it doesn't feel like that's kind of it doesn't feel like the times when Dawn affects this set for red matter as much going into the meta. So that's why I would put it probably in tier or rogue to be honest. I just don't think it's a well positioned leader right now.
Yeah, also,
Um,
I think there's a lot of blue in tier 1.5, so like you should be expecting to play against blue. I think blue just has a good matchup into Luffy.
I'm just saying it's in Rogue. I think it's in
putting
Rogue.
a playable red deck in a road.
I'm saying it's in Rogue, dude. There's just no way. We put Ace in Rogue. It's the same. It's almost the same thing.
I said playable.
Eh.
I I, I just want everybody to know that I said Rogue, but I'll let them put it in tier two. I'll let them, but I say it's in Rogue. All right. Let me speak about Rebecca. All right. I've been testing this deck heavily, y'all, heavily. For Knoxville, my Rebecca people. I don't know if y'all have a different read on the format. This deck is 1.5 in Knoxville, and but I think it's a tier one deck for the whole format. And then you might say, hey yo QB, why are you clarifying this? Like, what's the difference between point 0.5 and one? Um, I think with black decks in general, they are responsive to the meta. And I think you need the meta to either be defined of what you're building to beat, or you need the meta to. I think when the meta is as open as it is right now, and it's hard for the Rebecca deck to kind of do what it wants to do, which is like it wants to be able to um, the extra cards, like you already know, like you're playing the first like 30 cards that are in your deck, so you know like your win con, like the ways you can win with Luffy and King Kong Gun, and Orlumbus and Kiro and all those kind of stuff. Like those are just in the deck no matter what. But I think finding those other cards that you can play that kind of answer the meta kind of matter. And right now, that's kind of the trouble I've been falling into in testing so far. Is that I have Edwin over here playing yellow, and so I'm trying to find cards that beat yellow, but eventually, like there's just not really any cards that beat yellow. And then you have other people being targeted, and it's just like it kind of falls into kind of how I thought about Zoro last set. I don't think that Zoro or Rebecca can be the best deck when they're targeted, because when they're targeted, it's awful. Like there's not a lot of things you can actually do about it. They're really good when they're like not expected to be good. And so I think going into Knoxville, um, it is probably going to be the most heavily targeted deck. I think that's why we have a lot of Croc and Dofi and Nami and Katakuri and 1.5 or higher. So I think for Knoxville, it's probably 1.5. I think overall it'll end up being a tier 1 deck for a large majority of the format. But I think Knoxville specifically, I'd have it at 1.5.
My little take on it, I think you're probably right, but I think it's kind of criminal to not call it tier one with how crazy the 7-drop Luffy is and how crazy King Kong Gun is. Like the deck has incredible consistency as well because the leader is basically like a mini search every turn. I think the deck has all the pieces to be tier one, and I think it's got. I think all of the Black Dressrosa cards are incredible. It's got it can play blue cards, and the only blue cards worth playing are the removal cards, which is all you really need. So I mean, I think there's no reason why it couldn't be tier one, but it wouldn't surprise me if it got targeted. It would end up performing a little less.
Yeah. I guess I would say it is tier one with the caveat that like, hey y'all, I don't think Knoxville's the call because I think being targeted is going to be heavily, but I think that it's probably top three, probably top two actually decks in the format. So I guess it should be tier one by that logic.
Put it up there.
And if you, I guess guys, if y'all made it this far, you can kind of tell what kind of decks we're all playing this format. The way we talked about it, you can see that I've been playing a lot of Rebecca, Edwin's been playing a lot of Katakuri, and then Marc's been playing a lot of Dofi. And lo and behold, we do think these are three of the best decks in the format. I think we believe if you're a good pilot with these decks that you should see a lot of success going into the format.
Yeah, I think the real deciding factor for us is that we each think that these decks have something that the other decks don't have that is just like way better.
Yeah.
I mean, for Katakuri, I'll just straight up say it's a 10-drop Big Mom. I think that card is obnoxious, especially in a slower meta.
I think for Marc, what do you think, Marc? For Dofi, it's just card advantage, the amount of card advantage you can kind of establish between you and your opponent.
It's not broken.
Yeah. And I was.
That's crazy.
You said 10 drop Dofi, crazy.
Yeah, drawing 3 cards a turn off Film Dummy, crazy.
Yeah. And then I would say, for Rebecca, I think piloted by a skill. I think it allows you to skill diff your opponents. I think that's the biggest thing for me. I think with Rebecca compared to other decks. If I believe that if you're a good pilot, you give yourself the best chance to win, and you control the most games you can control in in the format. Like I said, I think there's one bad match. I think the bad matchup is kind of Curry. I think Croc can be tough, but I think there's some changes you can make to maybe deal with that matchup in the other blue matchups. But I think it allows you to deck build the most, and it also allows you to skill diff your opponents the most. So I think for me, the type of player that I am, those are two things I really look for when I go into tournaments. Is like, where can I find that edge? And I think Rebecca kind of allows you to try and find that edge at that level.
So these aren't my only tier one decks.
We're not done. We're not done.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
we
letting you know.
still got a couple of decks left.
I got three
Uh,
more tier one of me.
I don't think
But it's
this. I think
yeah,
this one's in the bottom.
yeah. If you're gonna play red green, the only red green leader you should play is Law.
I'm sorry, Craig. I think this one's in the bottom.
Yeah, shout out Craig. He's a good player with the deck, but I've never seen anybody else perform with it.
I'm not gonna. Shout out to Anthony. This one's in the bottom.
Yeah. I don't even think we have to say anything.
uh, Shout out to Will. This one's in the bottom. These are all for people that don't know these people. These are all local people that like. Well, so when I say this is the if you want to try, go ahead. People that play these decks. I am one of those people. I'm a GARP guy. I will swear up and down that this deck's playable every format, and then find out for myself. And I think everybody, you have people at your locals, people that you talk to every day. They probably have one of these decks. They're like, well, I really want to play this deck, but it's so bad. So, but play it for locals if you want. I think that's as far as I would go. Smoker, I think Smoker's Rogue. I just, we're not in a small cost format anymore. So I would say that its effect is almost like null and void at that point if like not a lot of one drops are really being dropped like that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's seen better days.
I'm I'm going to assume because this is where I would put it too. This is another one of your tier one deck, Mark.
Oh, for sure. For
I
sure.
I think the crazy thing that we see from this leader time and time and time again, it doesn't need new cards. it, it doesn't need new cards. It doesn't like you could put new cards to try and spice it up, but it just doesn't need new cards. I think you find, especially if we're saying blue is tier 1.5, he is probably one of those leaders that mollywop blue. If we say Katakuri is tier 1, I personally have not tested the matchup that much, but it is probably the same stuff it already did before. That if the law deck decides to be super aggressive, the Katakuri deck does not have enough removal to like outpace. It doesn't have enough removal in enough ways to like break the board if the law player just allows all this stuff to keep standing by the end of his turn. So
I will say this though, I think that Katakuri Law matchup actually did get a little bit better just because if you play like the 5-drop 7K power character Randolph, or you play the 6-drop 8K power Sparrow, just putting those on the board guarantees at least a blocker out almost every turn. People will try to defend stuff, so I think the matchup got a little bit better, but I definitely wouldn't call it good.
yeah, so and this is, I don't know. I feel like after set two, I feel like a lot of people like kind of strayed away from law, whether that be because Zoro got Marco and things like that. But like I think this deck just has always been at least in the top five. It's always somewhere. It's always somewhere in the top three, top two, and then he'll come back, sneak up, dominate for an event, and then go back into the chamber for a little bit because people don't want to play it because some will say it's hard or some will say it's inconsistent. But like it is one of those decks that like if it gets to do what it does, you're gonna win. Like it does not care what the other leader sitting across from it is. If it's able to do what it does, it's just gonna win that matchup.
Yep.
Vivi, shout out for everybody that watched the Vivi vid and subscribed from that. We really appreciate that. I think we actually put a lot of work into that leader. I know Mark was testing it at the beginning. So if to give my true and honest opinion about where I feel this leader is, I would put it in Rogue. I almost want to put it in tier two. I think it's better than trying it. I think it has a lot of options with the red and blue color, and I think there's a lot of good cards such as the Dofi, and I know we played King and a Who's Who engine and things like that. But I think it has a lot of options to where it can be super strong. I think it's one of the rogue decks that depend on what other leaders are in the format and what it can kind of deal with. So, but it has the removal to deal with Dofi. I think one of the hard matchups is Katakuri, but it's able to deal with Rebecca because if you play the Dofi, then that's a place you go +2 every turn, and then it has the low removal such as Robin and Chaka and Pell to deal with the Law deck. So I think it has really strong tier one matchups. It's all the tier two and rogue matchups that can kind of get kind of difficult for it. I think it has really good matchups into the actual meta though. Sometimes I almost want to throw it in tier two to be honest. I think it's. I think.
It's so it's so close.
I think. I really think if you can make a good list, I think there's some fine tuning that needs to be done to it. But and I think the other part that kind of struggles with is going first. I think that's probably a hard part too because going first, if like you can, like the best thing about the deck is like okay, turn one you get to draw a card when you weren't going to do anything anyway. But so I don't know. I don't know. I think if you cook a list, it could probably elevate itself to tier two, like bottom end of tier two. But I like the deck. I think it's super fun. Old man. What do we think about the old man?
Yeah, 1.5.
Yeah.
I also want to say 1.5, but dude, I'm just not sure. Like, I feel like the hits to this deck are really gonna be felt in the new set.
It never mattered. It's just so I don't know.
I don't know.
His leaders are stronger than everyone else.
Dude, I don't know.
I
Dude,
think
honestly, I'm looking. Maybe I think 1.5 might be slightly generous to this leader right
I
now.
I think it is out of respect. I really do. Because I also feel like the new decks that we are getting, plus the additions that the other decks are getting, he is. I don't think he's well positioned, but I think out of respect for what he has been and going into Knoxville, I think I don't know. I don't play a lot of Whitebeard, but I think that he has the ability to still do what he does. I think it's.
Yeah, we can put it in 1.5.
I think he's consistent. Now whether or
He is
not
consistent.
now whether or not that consistency matters to other decks, I think the one thing is like everybody that's playing Rebecca is gonna get stomped on you, and they don't. And then I've played with Andrew for a little bit. It did not matter. I didn't have to play well. I just had to like not die, and you just win the matchup. Uh, Yamato,
Tier
uh,
2.
tier two probably had the Starlight Bitter Bomb. To be honest, it's probably. I think it's the second, probably the second
Yeah,
best yellow leader.
sure.
I don't really think we need to discuss her too much. I think like she's Whitebeard but for yellow, but I think not being able to play like the 10 drop makes your other yellow matchups harder. Um, and she doesn't have any
I
removal.
will say I think it's interesting to play the deck. Well, I'd say it does have removal because you can play Thunderbolt kind of easy in it, and you can also play Katakuri, and you can play the 9-drop Yamato, which
True,
technically can all remove cards, but
true.
I don't know why you would ever choose this over a full power Katakuri deck. That's my biggest issue with it.
I think you would only if it's like more defensive. I think last format you were able to have like a slightly better Zora matchup by playing it, just because you were able to go to 6K once you got really low, and then it played like a little smaller of a curve, so it didn't really care about like the top end. So you kind of do it like that. But like I said, I was like speaking of Zora, but yeah, I think it's probably like solid tier two deck. Not not anything special. Probably just like a real yellow leader. That's not Katakuri.
Yep.
Z or Zeph. I don't know what we call him in the
Put him at the
TCG.
bottom.
You think it's down here?
I do think it's down there.
Yeah.
Sadness.
Maybe Rogue. Wait, actually, we have Smoker and Rogue. Yeah, you can put it in Rogue. It's
Nah, it's down here. I think it's kind of like by Sakazuki. Kind of like they do the same thing. Like they're both just trying to make the turn 10 and then drop 10 drop Kuzan and then just run the game like that. And I just don't think you can do that in meta. Like 10 drop Kuzan is not sticking versus like any of the top four decks. Well, it's sticking versus like two of them, but like these two don't care if it sticks or doesn't stick. It's just it's just gonna kill you. And then Zoro is
I
probably
think Zora's in an interesting spot.
I,
I think 1.5 is probably fair. I think next to Whitebeard, probably where it belongs.
This is also out of respect.
It's just like the new decks just I think have good matchups into it.
Yeah, I think all they do. They
So
go ahead.
that's all I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think the new decks dog walk it for the most part. I think the only one that may have a bad matchup from the new decks is maybe Queen, but Queen is able to live a long time. And but I think one of the things that you can do is just go really wide, and then a lot of the new decks don't have the counter power to counter out of everything. But looking at the top four outside of the Katakuri matchup, I don't really know what you're looking to play. I think the Crocodile matchup can starve you. The Dofi matchup is probably the same as it was beforehand. You probably mess up the Nami deck, and then Law and Zoro. I don't think Firefish is super strong into the new meta, so it's kind of hard to figure out what removal Red can really play that gets good value. I think that's probably the one thing I would think about it is that like if in the new meta what we're really thinking about is like most things are 6k and above. I think most of the time I think you may have like a couple things like in the Dofi deck you have Uta and Nami, but other than that like I guess you have Uta, Nami, and Grandisoro. But
I
like
think Rad Beam won. Rad Beam to one. Just like hurt him too.
yeah, there's just not enough defense, and then I think other decks can like extend the game against you, and that's just not what you want.
Yeah, the goal of that deck is to go fast and go as hard as possible.
Yeah. And Zoro, Rush Zoro kind of phased out at the end of the last format, and I still don't think it finds its place back into the deck in this new format either. Um, I don't know. I think it's hard to be a mid-range control deck when I think other colors do it better at that level. I think the aggression is kind of what you're looking for, but I think there's so every other color has so many tools that I don't think you're able to do that consistently and win.
hmm
But I guess for this last part, do y'all want to go ahead and give what y'all think is winning Knoxville? What do y'all think's winning?
Um, I think Katakuri's gonna win. I think any bozo could pull up with a 50 card Katakuri deck and potentially win. So imagine a good player shows up.
Mark, what you think?
Uh, um, what? Okay, let's think. I think. Oh, dude, there's so many options.
There are. There's really nine. There's really nine options, unless you're just trying to go for a hot take on a curve on a tier two deck.
No. I think my hottest take is mono blue crocodile. I think that's my hottest take.
You're crazy.
Wow.
You're crazy.
Did not see that one coming.
That's you think that one's winning?
No. That's like the hot take of two. Like I think probably either. Honestly, it might just be law. I think like
That would be
Rebecca's
funny.
pretty hard, right? So that's like its only bad matchup of all the good ducks. So you're just banking on people not knowing their Rebecca deck that well yet. I think it's pretty favored into like every other playable deck, and then like in tier 1 and 1.5.
I feel you on that. I feel that.
I think it has best matchups across the board. Yeah, I think it'd be law out of all of them.
I think for me, I think a lot of it has to do with countering the counter. And when I think about it from that perspective, it makes me think it's law. 'Cause I think when we look at every matchup up there, maybe you could argue that purple green Dofi has a good matchup because they have Punk Gibson and then Rebecca. Like those are the two decks. But because the set comes out that Friday, I don't know how many people are gonna have picked it up, and I don't know how many people are gonna have committed to testing these decks before coming out. So I don't. It makes me feel like it's law because I think law can handle every counter that everybody's playing for Rebecca and Dofi. And I want to say law, but I want to say Dofi too. It's one of those. It's either green, purple, Dofi, or law for me. And
Those are the two I was between.
I'm making my pick on green, purple, Dofi. I think I'm just switching right now on the clock. You know, y'all see me. I'm fickle. This whole freaking thing doesn't take a lot. I think I'm running green, purple, Dofi. I think I'll say right now. I think it's just I think tin drop is so broken. I don't think people will have adjusted to playing around it or figure out what they're trying to do into it. Um, and I think you still get the good matchups you were looking for across the board. And then you just look out for the Rebecca matchups. And I think you kind of go into the event and you say the Rebecca players who decide to play Rebecca just haven't worked enough on it in order to have that skill diff in the matchup. And I think that's how I kind of would approach it. And I still think you get to beat up on Law with Punk Gibson and other removal in that sense with Uta. So I think for me, that's the deck that I would pick to take into the event. I think it's going to win. Do y'all have any
Yeah.
last? I was gonna say, y'all have any last comments? Go ahead, Mark.
No, it's saying so we have what, one green purple Dofi, one law, one category as our
Yep, and
installer.
everybody, please leave your comments. Let us know what you think is going to win for Knoxville. If you sat through all of this, I actually don't even know how long this is. How long we talked? Looked like probably an hour. But if you sat through all this, you listened. We appreciate you. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We will be dropping this. This will have dropped on what? Probably like Wednesday or Thursday. Probably Wednesday right before Knoxville. I don't know. I don't know when I'm dropping it, but well, we appreciate it. Thanks, my other team members of Marc and Edwin for coming through and doing the tier list with me. Appreciate y'all, man. I think y'all gave a lot of good insight on what we think of the meta, and we'll be excited to look at maybe after. We'll probably look at it again going into what we should look at going into Fort Worth. See where we're at, see what the meta's looking like, how it's changed, how it's shifted, and then kind of how we might be preparing for Fort Worth, and just talk through that. And please just like, comment, and subscribe. Thank y'all for coming through. Thanks.
Peace.